Okay, hello everybody, and welcome to That WNBA Podcast. I'm your host, Jan Fromm, and welcome to the first episode. Firstly, hopefully, this will be the WNBA podcast where we can celebrate those thrilling games, those incredible athletes, and everything WNBA related. Hopefully, I can showcase a few of the incredible athletes that the WNBA has to offer. Hopefully, we can talk about some really inspiring stories. And whether you're a long-time fan or new to the sport, I'm going to hopefully have you covered with some game analysis, maybe some interviews or some guests joining us here or there, and hopefully all the latest news from around the league. So get ready to be inspired and informed, hopefully entertained, and let's tip off. Now, as you can see, I'm a little fuzzy here. I've got a virtual reality background, and I'm pretty new to this. So I thought in this first episode, we just talked a little bit about myself, do a little bit of an introduction to this new podcast, and introduce you to the new host. So all in all, let's get started here. My name is Jan Fromm, and I'm going to be hosting this podcast that I've called That WNBA Podcast. I've already got an account on Twitter. You can follow me at That WNBA Podcast and also on Instagram. And I'm just going to be sharing things from around the league, some posts, giving some of my own insight and some of my commentary on what's happening in the WNBA. As you can tell, for anyone that is from America and from the USA, my accent is not American. I am actually Australian, German-born, but now live in Perth, Western Australia. And hopefully for anyone viewing from the US, you won't be put off by that too much. But here in Australia, we've got some great basketball history. Some great players, both in the NBA and the WNBA. And yes, I'm going to be podcasting from here and hopefully releasing, to begin with, every Wednesday. Now, I just want to talk a little bit about, what my credentials are, if any, and why I've started this podcast. And as you can tell, I am a bit blurry. This is new to me. I will be getting hopefully a new webcam and a microphone. If any of you decide to listen to me ramble on about some of the things I love. So basically, as I just said, I was born in Germany, grew up in Germany. So one of my idols in the NBA side of things is Dirk Nowitzki. And as you can tell, maybe in the darkness here, that I am wearing a Dallas Mavericks shirt. And that's the NBA team I followed practically since I knew what basketball was and since I could talk and walk, if that makes any sense. I followed them for a long time, and obviously we're coming off an NBA Finals appearance here. I'm a long-time Dirk Nowitzki fan, long-time Dallas fan, and now obviously we got really lucky in having Luka there. So I grew up in the NBA world, even not growing up in America. And everything Dallas related was really where I kind of got my NBA news and views from. And with that reason in mind, you can probably guess that I'm a Dallas Wings fan. Now, I know that obviously there's a lot of people now talking about the WNBA, and I don't want to seem like I'm just kind of hopping on the bandwagon here and kind of capitalizing on maybe a bit of a trend that's going around. And I want to assure you it's not that at all. I like to think I kind of know what I'm talking about. I have played in the past, not at a high level or anything like that, but I have played basketball. I like to think that I have some idea of what I'm talking about. I've followed along for a long time. I've captained different sports teams, and I really have a passion for most things sports related, and maybe we'll go off topic here or there, depending on what you guys want to know. But I really enjoy a variety of sports, whether that's men or women, and really particularly I've had a real passion for women's sports for a long time. I'm still very young. I'm still growing in in lots of different ways. But I've really had an affinity for women's sports. I've watched a lot of women's sports live. I've grown up with friends that have played women's sport, whether that's basketball, soccer for any American or Australian viewers here, football if we're from Europe, and lots of other ones as well, like tennis, anything you can really think of. But the WNBA has been really up there for a long time, and I know that it hasn't got the viewership and then perhaps the love that it deserves. And I've also wanted to make a podcast for a long time. But I do think that the NBA space is obviously quite populated. I'm not from America, and I'm also not expecting this to really have a big audience to begin with. Maybe we can grow it if people enjoy listening to me. But I don't think I'm really going to break into the market there, even though I just want to start this to kind of get my thoughts out there, to enjoy and do it for a bit of fun, and maybe at some point it could become a little bit more serious than that. But I really kind of only have a few friends here that are really into the NBA or into American sports, and I think this will be a good way to kind of get my thoughts out there, even if not many people are listening in the beginning. So yeah, I kind of followed women's sports for a long time. I followed the WNBA. I follow Australian rules football here, if you're familiar with that, and the women's side of those sports. Soccer, both my country of origin, Germany, who I still follow closely, and Australia. We have the Matildas when it comes to the soccer here, and women's soccer, all very successful. We have some of the best players in the world in those two international sides. I follow the tennis when it comes to Germany and its women in particular, with Angie Kerber, or when it comes to Australia, with Ash Barty, who, as you've known, has won the Australian Open and Wimbledon before she retired from tennis. And I have some friends that also play in the WAFL here, on the AFLW, and also in some state level basketball and things like that. So I've been around it for a long time. I promise I'm not just jumping on the trend, but I think that the WNBA space is still obviously growing, a little underutilized, and maybe some people will find some joy and some knowledge in what I have to say. Another thing to get out of the way is obviously that I am a man talking to you about women's sports, and obviously some people may or may not like that side of things, but I can't help that, and I just hope that I can kind of offer some insights. I'm not here to diminish anyone's success in any way. I'm going to try and uplift all the WNBA players we're talking about on this podcast, all of the teams, and I really think that everyone should be watching women's sports, following women's sports, going to live games, and uplifting that and really enjoying the product. Something I see a lot is that it's not the same as the men's game in many different ways, and in all sports that we're going to maybe talk about in and around this podcast, but it's not meant to be. And I think once, especially men, get around the fact that men and women's basketball or any sport are not going to be exactly the same product. They are both unique. They both offer a ton of upside and a ton of enjoyment. if people would just get around that fact. That's also not to say that women's sport is not on the same level or at a higher level that men's sport. I know a lot of people might disagree with that. I think it's true that women's sport, the women's NBA, that any female sports rivals the men's side of things, and is just as good a product and can be enjoyed in just about the same way as the men's side of things. But we kind of have to get over the fact that maybe the product is not exactly the same when it comes to maybe dunking the basketball or whatever it may be. But I think that we've pretty much got that out of the way now, and I'm just here to kind of analyze, to bring some enjoyment, to hopefully bring some knowledge to the WNBA viewers and fans out there, whether you're older viewer or newer to the sport. We'll see where we go from here. I also want to mention on here some inspirations in this introductory podcast for this podcast in particular, and for my journey and from where I kind of got this idea from. And the main one I'd have to shout out is Nick Angstead, and also Isaac, of course, from the Locked On Mavs podcast. I'm a daily listener. I'm a Raccoon Squad member, for all of you out there that may know what that means. And absolutely adore that podcast. I listen every day. I'm a huge Dallas Mavs fan. And I've taken a lot of inspiration from the job that Nick specifically, but also Isaac Harris used to do. And I just hope that maybe I can offer a similar insight. I'm obviously not a reporter. I'm not in the States, so you won't be getting that sort of inside knowledge from me, whereas Nick is obviously much more accomplished, much more credited in that kind of field when it comes to reporting and being at Matt's press conferences and etc. And I'm also not going to cover a specific team on this podcast, so I'm not going to have the chance to do that, at least at the moment. But I took a lot of inspiration from those guys and from that podcast and the whole Locked On network, as well as some other podcasts I've listened to in the past. And hopefully we can improve. Hopefully I can get some better equipment. I won't be this blurry, hopefully at that point, and get a little bit of a better space behind me here. But for now, we'll see if this catches on, whether people might enjoy a listen, and then we'll go from there. You're going to be able to hopefully find this podcast on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and anywhere you get your podcast from. I hope you guys will listen at least once a week from this point onwards. Hopefully I can get some comments. You can give me hopefully some positive feedback. I hope that you guys can chime in. I'll try and leave a question at the end of each podcast that you can leave an answer to in the comments for some engagement. Hopefully I'll have some polls, some different things, and you can follow me along on Twitter for some deeper insights and some deeper conversations. So I think we're almost at the 15-minute mark here. Each episode will hopefully go for about half an hour. But as this is just the intro, I think we'll pretty much leave it here and get this out, and then I'll have a second podcast for you straight away about today's WNBA action and things happening in the WNBA at the moment. So from that point of view, I hope you'll be tuning in to that WNBA podcast weekly. So thank you for tuning in today. I really hope you enjoyed this intro episode. I know it's just a bit of me rattling off some information about myself, but hopefully in the future I can make you guys feel incredibly connected to the WNBA and its athletes and what it has to offer. Don't forget to, once this comes out, to hopefully subscribe, like the podcast, leave a comment, all that stuff that will help me gain some viewership and hopefully reach more people. Follow me on social networks like Instagram and Twitter at That WNBA Podcast, and hopefully I can give you the latest updates and get you guys involved in some conversation with fellow fans. Until next time, please keep supporting women's basketball and celebrating these heroes on and off the court. And I will see you next time on That WNBA Podcast.